Bigfooty Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, Conda, power. I love the power. I love the power. I love the power.
Now, last player, probably the most talked about player on our forum this year and certainly to come as well, which is Todd Marshall. Also played for New South Wales, was kind of half-linked to GWS, but he was made ineligible to go there. Played in the TAC Cup for Murray Bushrangers this year. He's 198 centimetres, 87 kilo. Player comparison, I don't know, he reminds me of someone like Mitch Clark, maybe someone like Sean McKernan as well. He's very athletic. He's got a powerful one-grab contested mark. He's got plenty of X-factor. What do you think of Todd? Is he worth the hype?
No. Look, my main concern is his frame. You look at him; he is the narrowest player in this draft, right? Like, no, I'm not joking. Like, he's a skewer, basically. And you know, for a small midfielder, it's probably not a big problem. Mm-hmm. For a key position forward, I mean, what that really does is it puts a cap on his ability to gain mass and gain strength with it. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he's on leads right now and he's able to get a little bit of separation and take marks in contests against 18-year-olds, he's good at that. But because of that physical capacity, I'm a bit worried about his capacity to bring that up at the next level and still be able to do that against 23-year-old fullbacks or centre halfbacks.
So he's got a bit of the John Butchers about him in terms of his body.
Oh no, because John Butcher had a better AFL body than Marshall does in terms of his ability to bulk up a bit.
John Butcher would be the thinnest. Would have
sure.
the smallest waist of a key forward I've ever seen on a footballer.
Yeah, well, the waist is not the concern for me with a key forward.
He could fit into a size 2 dress, I reckon, John Butcher.
The concern for me is upper body development. And you look at Todd Marshall's arms, and they are really, really small. They're spindly. Yeah. And he is a player that at the top level, he's going to be a contested marker. And you don't get contested markers with those arms, you know. And
do you think he has the build to grow into it? Because I remember Warren Treadray as a 17-year-old, and he looked like he'd blow away in a strong wind. He still had wider shoulders than Todd Marshall. Like Todd Marshall's at Hugh Minson category of narrowness, which I probably wouldn't go that far.
I reckon I would. I reckon he's exactly in that category. Okay. So that's probably my main concern with him. I think as far as his production at under 18 level, he's been really good. He kicks goals. He's got a nice little 10-metre burst, which gets him ahead of his opponents at this level, and it'll be good. It'll be good to see how he goes in the combine in that category, because if he's in the top 10 in that category, then that makes him still draftable regardless. It turns him from being a key position forward that we're hoping he might be, but maybe he'll just be a tall Monfries type, and that's okay. That's still a player. That's still an okay player that you want on your side. But I don't think he's the key position. I don't think he's a guy that you can say, well, we're drafting him and he's a key position player. Like, I'm not convinced he's that at AFL level, but he can still be a really good player.
I think he's got a body that he can grow into. I think he's the sort that can put on a good sort of 8 to 10 kilos and still do what he does. No. He's pretty new to footy as well, especially elite football. He did have a budding cricket career and cancelled that. He was an off-spinner, 198 centimetre off-spinner. How about that, and he did cancel that to concentrate on footy. And he's certainly not the finished article. He's very much a player that's living off raw potential at the moment. I thought he had a pretty impressive champs. Kicked 14 goals across both divisions. Had a pretty good TAC Cup as well, reasonably consistent. Kicked 2 or more goals in 7 of his 11 games. But it's his ability to take those contested marks at the highest point, and also his ability to kick sort of instinct goals at ground level, which I really, really like.
Yeah, look, I guess that when we're looking at key position players, we also need to be looking 5 years ahead. And with some of the stuff that's coming out as far as the NFL, like they're talking about, concussions are bad, but it's actually a whole bunch of little things that get in fairly innocuous tackles and so forth that cause long-lasting brain damage. Mm-hmm. Then we might actually see the contested aspect of being a key forward be diminished heavily through umpiring. Yep. And in that environment, if that is the way that the game goes, so it moves further away from contesting than it is currently, then in that environment he could really thrive. So that's a long-term call in that respect, is where do we see the game going? And if we see it going that way, then maybe he becomes the perfect full forward of the future, same as some ruckman are the ruckman of now, they wouldn't have been 10 years ago. I don't know.
So I
Tricky.
guess the question is his draft range. I think,
Oh.
look, he is the most hyped. He's probably got more potential than any other key forward in this draft, which probably isn't saying much because there's bugger all key forwards in this draft. But he could go as high as 3 to someone like Freo if they keep their first round pick. He could go that.
Really?
I think he could. I think he certainly could. He may go a little bit later than that. I don't think he's dropping out of the first round. I guess the big question is, if he's there with our first pick, would you want to see us pick him up?
No,
Do you think we will pick him up?
maybe. For me, I want us to because of at the start of the podcast, I said because of the draft type it is, I want us to just concentrate on that centre square mid section and maybe a good attacking half forward mid, and then whatever tools we'll draft next year.
Yep.
Although maybe a key backman potentially later.
Yep. That's all right. I would prefer to go small with our first pick.
Yeah.
If we get a top 10 pick for Hamish Hartlett this year, I think it's an absolute Monty that we would pick Todd Marshall with one of those if he's there.
Oh, I hope not.
Rumours of Winter has asked another question on the forum, which is Todd Marshall just hype? He doesn't seem to know footy or have the body for footy. For me, he's certainly just hype at the moment, but as I say, you look at the raw talent on display and you see he's got potential to be something special if he puts it all together. And we've also got to remember that he's not come through the traditional sort of junior footy pathway. He's only concentrated on footy for 12 months. He only played one game of football last year. He had pretty much no pre-season this year as well. He's coming from a long way back compared to other guys that have been through the system, been through state junior levels and under-16s champs and all that sort of stuff. And you've also got to remember that recruiters don't draft on what players have done in the last 12 months. And there's certainly a lot of people on our forum that are saying, well, he doesn't even look like he should go in the top 40.
I don't agree with that.
No. People draft on what they could become in the future. And I'm going to use the example of someone like Chad Corns, who was, when he was drafted, was exceptionally raw, unfit, couldn't kick over a jam tin, had shocking foot skills. But he had that one trait, which was a huge contested mark, which was enough for Alan Stewart to pull the trigger on. And look, he became a pretty bloody good footballer. These players aren't the finished article at this stage of their careers, and it's possible he has tired as the season's gone on. He has played 17 or 18 games this year compared to one last year. So it's possible he's tired from a pretty full-on year. And what I see in Marshall is a player that's got a great one-grab contested mark. He's super quick on the lead. He's got good foot skills, can kick goals at ground level. He's great below his knees. Has a frame that I think could hold an extra 7 or 8 kilos of muscle. And he's got those raw tools that can put it together if he doesn't put it together, and there's no guarantee that he will. And there might be enough doubt there whether he can put it all together. Certainly sort of things like work rate, mental application are going to need to improve. But of all the key position forwards in the draft, I think he's got the highest ceiling for sure.
Yeah, look, for me, as far as Paul potentially drafting him, I'm okay with us drafting him if we don't categorise him as a key position forward and then, say, oh, we don't need as many key position forwards now. I don't agree with that. I think if we categorise him as, say, a half forward or something like that, so maybe that means we don't, pick up more Monfries types marking smalls and we treat him as if he's replacing a marking small. I think that's a better, for the squad, I think it works, and I think that that's a role he can effectively play. Yep. The thing I really like about him, though, and I think that is one of the things that Bigfooty is probably down on, he looks laconic, like he looks like he doesn't give a shit, but that's his face. Look at his play. That's the cute. No, that's because when you look at Matthew Lloyd back in the day, he never looked like he gave a shit. He didn't look like he even knew what planet he was on.
Matthew Lloyd looked like a fish.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But you look at Marshall, and when he you'll see him run and he goes for the leads, but more importantly, when he can see the ball stuffed up upfield, he doesn't then put his hands on his hip and shout at his teammate for not getting it right. He's running and continues his lead onwards and has a crack at getting the ball from wherever it's landed, even if it's not coming to him in a mark.
He's
gets
a different
involved.
sort of laconic to someone like Westhoff, who looks like he's going
hugely.
in first gear pretty much all time and doesn't chase or anything. Like Marshall, like when the ball's near him, he runs like a
He does.
jet. And he chases like a jet as well, and he can lay a pretty bloody mean tackle for sure.
Yeah.
But he at the moment, he does go missing for 50, 60 minutes at a time, which, sees his output sort of a bit lower than what I think a lot of people hope it should be at this stage.
And I think that as far as teams that might get him, I think he'll do better in a really disciplined side than he will at a side that'll treat him like a god. So if he ended up at Carlton, for example, and they treat him anything like they treated Favola, he'll be terrible. But the fact that he's still sort of an outsider to football, and you might still be able to retain that, hey, I'll keep contesting aspect to his game, I think that's what will make him a viable AFL player and worth having on a list.
Yeah, he's certainly going to be one to watch, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's at Port Adelaide next year. Whether he becomes another Johnny Butcher or whether he becomes another Warren Treadray, time will tell.
Oh, he won't be either.
He'll be Todd Marshall. Right, so next pick is me, pick 13 with West Coast. And looking at their list, I think there's a couple of holes there. I reckon their midfield is still quite young and runs fairly deep. I really like their sort of group of second stringers coming through. Defence looks all right. Again, reasonably young. Good key defenders there. Forward line's strong. But I think for this pick, it's come down to two players with this one. And for me, I can't overlook Todd Marshall, who's 199cm forward from Murray Bushrangers. Look, Kennedy's going to be 30 next year. Nathan Vardy's pretty much perpetually injured. So a lot rides on Darling, and on occasion Lysett when he plays up there as well. They don't really have any other young key forwards coming through. So for me, I think Marshall's, if West Coast pick him there, they're going to be able to give him a couple of years to develop in the waffle, learn from Kennedy, and by the time he's sort of 19, 20, 21, he's going to be set to take over. And I'm a big fan of Todd Marshall. I know a lot of people are sort of wavered between, we want him, no, he hasn't done enough. But I think the X factor, the contested marking, the pace, his ground level skills make him a pretty mouth-watering prospect for me. And I think it would be a pretty smart pick by West Coast to pick him there.
Yeah, for me, the thing I like most about Todd Marshall is his short notice dash. So the fact that he can get separation. I think he'll go well. Like forward, I think he'd be if he's there at Port's pick. I think I probably would have to really consider taking him because I think he would fit perfectly well with our slightly inaccurate entries into the forward 50. Because he can be standing around and then a split second later he can be 10, 15 metres away at the fall of the ball. He's really excellent in that regard for me. And he's tall enough and he's got enough run in his game. He looks like he doesn't care about the game, but he obviously does enough follow through work, in my opinion, that you just ignore his face. He's clearly the best key position forward prospect in this draft, in my view. And I still am worried he might end up being a bit Westhoffian. But I'm sort of convincing myself that he could be kind of almost like if we had him as our stay-at-home forward, the way Port play, if he was the only forward in our forward line, I think he could make that work. So,
yeah. Look, I had a couple of other people there in mind. Obviously, Sam Powell-Pepper was under consideration. He was going to be my other pick that I strongly considered, just because he's, West Coast know him really well. He was part of their reserve side this year. And again, he's a power athlete. Jared Berry was the other one I was sort of half considering too.
Fair enough.
Mish, what are your thoughts on Todd Marshall, mate?
I love him. And again, I had him going to West Coast ages ago. I just sit there and go, there's one thing he needs to learn is how to present more often. And the one person who's best in this league at presenting more often is Kennedy.
Yep.
So if he can't learn there, he's not going to learn. Because, again, Kennedy, when he was in 18s, he wasn't the quickest, he wasn't the fittest or whatever, but he always got to the contest, just like he does now. He presents and gets in front. and his hands are always at the footy. And he's still not the quickest or anything like that, but you know when the ball's going forward, you know he's going to be on the end of it. And if Marshall can get that work ethic into his game, it'll be very hard to stop because he's so good at reflex ground level stuff.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Right.
Yep.
I think there's a few unhappy people in the chat, but that's bad luck. And here we go. Port Adelaide's pick is in.
Oh, the melts are going to come because I want to...
Here we go.
We're going the wrong way with players available.
Todd Marshall! Oh. Todd Marshall! Todd Marshall! Welcome to Port Adelaide.
Barry and Sam Powell Pepper both available when we're going for Todd Marshall. We're going to miss one of them. We're going to miss at least one of them.
That was always... Toddy Marshall. Welcome to Port Adelaide, the big
all right.
West off. Love it. We've got our new.
This is the point where the record scratch happens.
I am going to message Mish and see what he's doing at the Little Athletics, and I'm going to say
he's fine because we did discuss that you could go one other and then 3 genuine mids, so we haven't shat the bed yet.
We haven't done anything
and he does meet a need.
Look, Todd Marshall, 199 centimetres, great contested mark, great speed, great ground ball skills, can pick up the ball. Look, I'm excited about this. I'm very, very excited by this.
It changes our forward line. It changes forward of the centre square hugely. Todd Marshall could play as that second key forward as of next year, realistically, behind, as we were talking about, Charlie Dixon. Charlie Dixon do more the contesty stuff, and then Marshall end up being the opportunist.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty happy with Marshall, to be honest. I liked him the first time I saw him. The first game I saw him play, he took 3 really strong contested marks, kicked a couple of really nice goals, showed really good pace, great chasing ability. Like, he could end up not developing and end up being another Johnny Butcher and play, 35 games across 7 years, and that'll be it. But I think there's enough talent there, enough raw potential to work on, that he could... Well, there's definitely the potential there that he could become something pretty special.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, I mean, like, there's a question on the Spreaker chat, because I'm reading it. With the talk from Interstater saying, with the talk of so many good forwards next year, could we have waited? The reality is, with the key forwards, like, so many of them don't work out, and that's for, premiership clubs, they don't work out. Like, go through Hawthorn's list of drafted key position forwards that have completely bombed, and they're still winning premierships. Like, you're going to have misses. And so if you're only drafting one key forward every, 7 years, then you're not got a higher chance of success, yeah? So that's where we're at. Like, we've drafted one key forward. He was the best key forward in the draft. Okay, cool. I still think we need to draft key forwards next year if we get picks.
Plus, a lot of the good key forwards next year are academy linked, and we're probably not going to get a chance to get them anyway.
Well, we'll see, I guess.
Yep.
I mean, they're not all, are they?
Not all of them, but we now don't have a first-round pick, so we don't have the option really anyway. So
it's fine. And Cripper said we can trade back into the first round easy.
That's true. We'll say goodbye to Pittard and we'll get Sam Hayes or something like that. So
all we do is trade our 2018 first rounder.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it.
Look,
So
I mean,
catch up forever.
Just keep doing that every year.
Yeah.
So where does he need to improve? We've seen the pace, we've seen the X factor, the contested marking. We know he's never kicked a bag. This year he maxed out at 3 goals, but he did kick 3 goals on quite a few occasions. Where does he need to improve in the coming years?
Endurance, strength, and just presenting more often. Repeat presentation, all that. So again, all of it is coachable. The only other thing technically he needs to improve, well, probably 2 things. He needs to straighten his arms a bit more when he marks.
Okay.
He's got them bent at about 10 degrees when he marks now rather than having them straight. So, yeah.
Okay.
And look, those are flaws that or not the marking one, but the other ones, those are flaws that he's clearly aware of, because you just look at that, what is it, the Future Stars thing with the stupid graphic at the front? Like, he talks about that he hasn't played out a full game all year. and that that's something he needs to do. So he's aware of it, and that's good that he's aware of it before we've had to tell him.
Look, we know, obviously, there's been a lot of press that he's never had a pre-season. He only started concentrating on footy this year, so I think certainly on the physical side of things, he's got a lot to improve on. And again, I think he's got the build to build his body up. You know, he can easily put on another sort of 7 or 8 kilos over the next couple of years and become a contested marking beast. That'd be great.
Narrow shoulders, mate. Narrow shoulders are going to prohibit him to some extent. He's going to have to be a leading guy.
I still remember that pasty white Matty Lobe with who looked like he'd blow over in a strong wind. And,
but he had good shoulders. He always had good shoulders. He always had a good frame.
Was the same.
He's halfway between Lobby and Minson, which is, because Minson, like, he was an ocelot. He had no chance to realistically build up that body strength. And that's certainly an area that Marshall's going to struggle with. If he could become a contested mark based on leap and eyes on the ball and all that stuff. But he's not going to be like a, shove blokes aside, this is mine sort of contested mark. Like that, I don't think that's ever on the cards from realistic.
I think he's more going to be I'm going to outjump and outmark you from in front type contested mark.
So it's realistically, he's going to have to do strength work for sure. But he's got to just work on it. He's got to. I feel like he's a guy that's going to have to magnify what he's already good at, which is his athleticism and his speed and and obviously he has to improve his endurance as well. Like that's a non-negotiable for everyone.
Yeah. I don't know. I look at him and I look at his frame and I think, God, he reminds me so much of Treadray in that '96 SANFL Grand Final as a 17-year-old. Like the same sort of spindly body, no shoulders. Look. Treader's not having any shoulders certainly didn't prohibit his career or his ability to build himself up to monolithic.
He still had the wide frame though. Look, Macca, I guess my question to you is: are we going to lock in you saying that Marshall is going to be the next Treadray?
Yes, please. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. Bookmarked.
The next Treadray Marshall. Bookmarked right here. You heard it here first. Let's make it happen.
Cool.
Craig, what expectations do we have of Todd Marshall next year? Do we think he's a slim chance of playing AFL footy next year, or is it just spend the year in the SANFL, build up your tank, build up your body, and see how you go?
SANFL. Pick me 45 goals in the SANFL. I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, look, I think that SANFL is the most likely prospect, but I wouldn't be too surprised if he got a few games just because we are so piss weak on key forwards. Like he would, if you've got Charlie Dixon getting all the attention and maybe play Marshall for 3 or 4 games, where he gets to come in as that second foil and he'll probably kick a few goals, I would have thought. I think he's got the ability to, I think his athleticism is enough for him to maybe play a couple of games this year.
Yeah.
So, but I wouldn't count on it.
If
he doesn't, I'm not really worried. No, I don't. Oh, well, we'll see, won't we?
It depends on form. Well, we've got Eddie.
Injuries.
Howard's going to be
Injury. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Eddie Howard and
I don't think
Sam will have a say in it.
We'll see.